Would like to welcome our guest in as Leah Vann from The Advocate joins us. Leah, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Doing great, doing great. Look, I always tend to start off with guests, especially ones that live in Louisiana, with a question they're not expecting. So I know you haven't been living in Louisiana long, right? You have to have a favorite snowball flavor, right?
Snowball flavor. Like a like snow cone?
Like snow cone, snowball, same
Okay.
same
I
thing,
guess
right?
different regions call it different things. I
Absolutely.
I can't say I have a favorite flavor because I don't think I've had one of those since like high school.
You have to try. You have to go out to Kona Ice in left field or right field and try one then.
See, I don't make my way around the ballpark much other than just like going straight to the press box. I do like walk around and linger a little bit. But I'll have to try. I do tend to like orange, like citrusy flavors in the summer. So if that's an option, that is probably what I would lean.
If you ever make it to New Orleans, you have to get like a dreamsicle cream flavor. Those are pretty good.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
Those
Yeah.
are pretty good. So LSU coming off another series sweep as they defeat Alabama this weekend. We'll talk some about that, but kind of want to talk about this team, right? I saw your piece about the Jobu statue that Braden Jobert has, and I remember hearing on TV a couple of series past about Joe Morgan's helmet being broken and the reason why he still wears it. But superstition's always been a part of baseball. How superstitious is this team?
I think it depends on the individual player, right? So like Braden is one of those guys who is superstitious. I mean, I think I wrote also last year about how he draws his grandma's initials in the sand before every at bat. He kind of does the same celebration every single time. Beloso, I think, started participating in the Jobu statue thing, but it's like I don't think he like necessarily buys into it too much, right? So yeah, I mean, I know Trey Morgan has the helmet thing, but as far as like from guy to guy, if they have them, they won't share them, right? Because that is kind of the baseball way of like, I'm not gonna tell you my secret. I thought we did learn about Dylan Cruz eating the Nerds Clusters candy before every single at bat. And I think Tommy might also eat a candy of some kind before his at bats too, but haven't been able to confirm that. So, yeah, those are the ones that we know about so far. I think every guy has a routine when they step up to the plate that you can kind of tell. I mean, if you've seen them or watched them enough, and especially Trey again, like he always takes like a little swing and then he like kind of moseys on over, and so yeah, I mean, and then you obviously got walk up songs, you got walk out songs. So, I think last year I was asking Eric Raiselman, I was like, you changed your walkout song. Is it because you walked like three guys last week? He's like, no. Um,
I walk three guys. What are you talking about?
yeah. So, yeah, I think that's my long-winded answer.
Kind of want to talk about the bullpen, right? So the bullpen's had some issues throughout the season. They've had ups and downs. I mean, really, pitching overall has had ups and downs this season for LSU. Javen Coleman, somebody coming back off of injury. How important is he going to be to this bullpen? And really, when you look at the bullpen, I think that Herring is the go-to guy. Who's the next go-to guy? And who do you expect, I guess, to develop? It's more so a long-winded answer as well, but this bullpen is going to be so important for this team going forward, especially as they've had inconsistencies past Paul Skeens.
Yeah, let me pull up Coleman, because we know that he struck out six and two and a third, which is quite impressive. And I'm trying to see, he did end up facing the top of the lineup in that outing. So, which there was not very many pitchers out there who could shut down Alabama's lineup, especially that top four this weekend. I mean, they're just like, there's no like clear cut star other than maybe Andrew Pinckney, but there's no like Dylan Cruz in that lineup. They're all just consistent. They're all just competitive, and they're also like experienced and old. So they've seen a lot of college baseball pitches, which is again that I mean we kind of undervalue that when we saw some of the teams last year in Omaha that made it. They had lineups who had seen a lot of college baseball pitches. But if we go back to LSU's bullpen, Yeah, I mean, I still think, Griffin Herring had a little bit of a tough time on Friday, and that was towards the end. And I think and I think Jay also kind of spoke to this, is like, he's a freshman. And sometimes those moments get a little big, you get a little bit jitters, and like, that just happens. Like, they're not going to be perfect. These aren't major league pitchers. And then I think, college baseball, I can't remember where I saw this. They're hitting way more home runs this year, overall. And so I don't know if there's something different with the balls or what, but overall, like, hitting is on fire this year. It's a hitting year. It's like, the gorilla balls year. So you also kind of have to take that into account. Uh, you know, I think Coleman could be huge, because if you're able to extend him in time for the postseason, not only is he a lefty, but he's pretty consistent. And I think Jay alluded to the fact that he was probably going to be in the starting rotation last year before he got injured. And so that tells you that he could be a middle reliever that could, really extend innings in the case that we saw on Saturday with Ty Floyd, not lasting very long. The bullpen's been a concern because, you lost the best guys in the bullpen, which was Garrett Edwards. He is out for season. I haven't published that officially yet, but I've been saying it on every radio show. I think he had an arm brace on this weekend. I think we all know what's going on, and I know what's going on because I've talked to his dad. But Chase Shores, again, like, that was your closer, right? And I think going into this year, if you back up, going into the fall, I mean, you had Jaden Newt, which you took from the draft, and he was supposed to be probably a contender for a starting position or a closing position. Grant Taylor had made some huge strides this summer in the Cape Cod League, to the point where he had moved up his draft stock. He was expected to be a starter. And then you even have like the JUCO transfer and Caleb Appleby, who's just a gigantic person. He's like 6'10". He was going to also be like a veteran guy, kind of like a Nate Ackenhausen, right? Who's seen a lot of college baseball and kind of like get through it, right? And then Jason Bowman out again this season. So yeah, I mean, I think the concern is, there's a lot of injuries, but the counter argument to that is that every college program is experiencing that. And that happens every year. Alabama was out 2 of its starters this weekend. And they've been out without Grayson Hitt and Ben Hess for a couple of weeks now. We saw the Ole Miss return Hunter Elliott, and he wasn't 100%. And he was a key starter for them last year in Omaha. Arkansas, they've lost quite a few pitchers too. Because I know when I posted about one of the pitching injury posts, a bunch of Arkansas fans were like, "Cry me a river, we've done this too." And I'm like, okay, calm down. This isn't an attack. So if I think about the guys that they do have, right? Griffin Herring, probably your best reliever still. Doesn't matter what happened on Friday. He is the best. I think Javen Coleman's probably second best. I mean, just based off of what we've seen out of him. I know he hasn't gone more than 40 pitches, but sometimes you don't need that yet. I think Bryce Collins has potential to be, again, like one of your best relievers. Bryce Collins and Riley Cooper are guys that can go multiple times in a weekend. And whether you're using them for one inning, whether you're using them for one batter, they are good guys to go to. They're pretty consistent, and you know what you're going to get out of them. Riley Cooper, I think his performance yesterday was pretty stellar. It's kind of reminiscent of what we saw last year when he was just kind of, again, put in a matchup situation, and he was able to kind of get LSU through things. And it wasn't always like the cleanest, but he still throws hitters off balance enough to the point where, like, he's going to force some weak contact. He's going to, and he's going to get the outs. It's not going to be a lot of strikeouts. It's not going to be fancy, but he's going to get it done. I think you look at Thatcher Hurd. I think the key to this season, the key to this team making it to Omaha, which Jay has said from the beginning, is whether or not you can get Thatcher Hurd to extend, innings, and whether or not you can get him to a position where he is able to start games. Yeah. And if he's not able to start games, if he can come in after somebody's having a tough outing, to start, like a Christian Little or a Ty Floyd. I think Christian Little is a good starter. I think he likes to start. I think he operates better as a starter than a closer. I think we've all kind of seen that. Maybe not his best outing, but still not actually a bad outing on Sunday. Yeah. So I think that Thatcher Hurd is kind of, you came into this year thinking he'd be in the starting rotation. They tried, kind of worked at Texas, didn't really work over the weekends in SEC play, but he has the stuff. There's a reason why he's a projected first-round draft pick next year. And, he came from a pitching factory in UCLA, and he's a different style. So if you get him going, that could be the key to saving this entire staff.
Yeah, I agree with that. That Thatcher's off speed is remarkable. I mean, he's got some really good off speed. And it's almost inconsistent. Like yesterday, kind of noticed it almost with both teams, was just finding the strike zone sometimes can just be so important. I know Skip Bertman talked about that a lot when he was coaching over at LSU about just pitching in the strike zone, let the defense do the rest of the work. Speaking of defense, let's talk about catcher. If you look at, and I'm sure you saw it more than anybody, your Twitter mentions last year about catcher had to be crazy, right? And then you see LSU go with Brady Neal towards the beginning of the season, comes out with the injury. But then you look at Milazzo's batting average, batting over 350. Travinski has the clutch hits the past two series. Has catcher been surprising to you this year when it comes to the batter's box, not so much behind the plate?
I think I actually fully expected Alex Milazzo to start from day one this year, just based off his seniority, based off how much they missed him last year. And I know that in the past his bat hasn't been the strongest facet of his play, but right now he's on a roll. He's consistent. He will get on base. His plate discipline is very good. He's able to either draw that walk or he's going to get a little hit, and it's not going to be a home run. It's going to be a single, but that's all you need. Or it's going to be a bunt. He's really good laying down the bunt and advancing runners. And essentially, when you're at the bottom of the lineup, at this kind of lineup, especially, that's all you need, right? But defensively, yeah, I mean, he kind of stops. I mean, not that Alabama was really like a big base running team, but he really kind of eliminates that asset of the game when you're going against teams like a Kentucky, right? Because he can throw runners out. I mean, they know that they can't run against this guy. And then the other aspect of him is that he's a great receiver and he knows his stances very well, according to Josh Jordan. And also he can steal strikes, which is really important for guys like a Christian Little. Christian Little throws that cutter and it's kind of nasty, right? And it can kind of go all over the place. And so you need a catcher who understands those kinds of pitches. And Brady Neal is a phenomenal hitter. And I think that's why, and you look at Jay and kind of the formula of his teams is that he prioritizes hitting over defense, over pitching. And we've seen that probably throughout his career. But Brady Neal's been hurt. He's likely out for season. He's kind of got one of those injuries where he could be out for season or he could come back and no one really knows. It's a back injury. So it's kind of a day-to-day situation. All he's been able to do is non-baseball workouts so far. But, as a freshman, we were seeing some pass balls, right? We were kind of seeing like he was doing really well, obviously. But then the bat kind of took a little bit of went by the wayside, right? Because he's a freshman. And I don't care how talented you are, even if he had gone into, the minor leagues, he still would have had a learning curve. And the learning curve here in college is the same way. And so, obviously a fantastic catcher. Obviously this team could use him in the lineup. And, you obviously want to have as many catchers as possible for rest purposes. But I think that Milazzo's done an exceptional job in his position. I think that Hayden Travinski, bringing him back into the lineup in general, is beneficial for this team. And we've already seen that twice in 1 week. And I think, people were kind of freaked out when they threw Hayden Travinski in there, the second day of the Ole Miss series. No, you can't have a catcher play every single game. You literally can't. And I think Jay learned that after playing Brady so much and Brady got hurt. And so I think I I think LSU has a good catching room right now. The problem would come if either Hayden or Milazzo got hurt.
I kind of just want to go off the rails a little bit because you talked about offense and the importance of offense. We saw Paxton Kling come back this weekend. How does he fit into this lineup?
Huge. That's kind of like, if Braden's having a bad day, stick him in there, right? If Josh Pearson started and he's having a bad day, you stick Paxton in there, or he could start, just as like we've seen him start, right? I mean, he's extremely athletic. And for teams that you need a fast base runner, I mean, he's your guy. But also, I mean, we saw him make a pretty awesome catch in the outfield too when he did come in. I can't remember if that was Saturday. So yeah, it's kind of hard to fit everybody into the lineup, but then at the same time, some of these guys need rest. It's late in the season. Change it up a little bit. And, again, like Braden's a left-handed batter, Paxton's right-handed, so you can kind of guess the matchup situation too, when depending on the teams they face.
Yeah, absolutely. I was excited to see him come back this weekend too. I think he's going to be important. In fact, you talked about his base running. That story you did on him, kind of in the recruiting, is like give us an inside, almost a profile on Jay Johnson, right? A guy that kind of talking about Paxton Kling's recruitment. He committed to Maneri. Maneri leaves, right? Talked about how kind of Kling was the guy that sprinted through base running when everybody else wants to hit the ball and show what they can do. Jay Johnson goes out to Pennsylvania, right? Shows up at dinner in Pennsylvania. Everybody's wearing sweatpants. Shows up in a suit. What kind of guy is Jay Johnson? Like, what's that backside of him that we don't get to see every single day?
I think what you see is what you get with Jay. Like, he really, really wants to win the College World Series. Like, that is his goal of his entire, like, that is his mission. Like, he loves college baseball. He won't do anything else. He's a competitive guy and he will do whatever it takes to get there. Like, he's a dreamer, and so far it's worked out for him and it's gotten him really far. Work ethic is never a problem for Jay Johnson, and he had gone to, I think, an area code tournament or something out in California to watch Paxton Kling right when he decommitted, and then he flew out to Pennsylvania and visited his family. Yeah. And those are the lengths that he will go to get the top recruits in the country, and he will beat you to it. The similar situation with Tommy White, like he just showed up. Like, he's just like, all right, I'll be there tomorrow. Like, as soon as he hit the transfer portal, I think the regional had just ended. He's like, all right, well, let's get going recruiting Tommy White and Paul Skeens. Like, he's always on it with his recruiting game. I think every coach I've talked to has said that he's an expert recruiter. I wrote a big profile on him last year about how he has like whiteboards around his apartments where he's lived in the past, so like looking at other teams and down the road in the bracket, and also what players can help him get to certain places, because remember, he had to recruit for programs that weren't going to get the big names, right? So he has had to look for the diamonds in the rough, and now he can go for the diamonds. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like those coaches you see succeed so well over at smaller programs, they get to bigger programs, and some, they kind of die off in terms of their ability to coach, things like that, because they expect it, right? Jay Johnson's not like that, and we've seen that, especially with recruiting, the way he coaches and his approach every single day when it comes to matchups. You talked about Tommy White. Look, I think the best part in that story that you did about Tommy and kind of his demeanor of being a quiet person was like, you don't expect that from somebody that has tattoos, long hair, and hits a bunch of home runs, right? Is he really stayed that quiet? Like, how do you crack that guy's shell and give more of an insight into who he is off and on the field?
Yeah, so what I feel like with Tommy, I wouldn't call him like quiet. I would say that he is a very tight-knit circle. And he likes to keep it that way, because he kind of knows that he's a big deal, right? And when you are a guy like a Tommy White or a Dylan Cruz, you have to keep your head on straight amidst all the noise that's around you. It is very beneficial to you to keep a tight-knit circle. And I kind of talked to his dad and he's like, yeah, I mean, he's had like the same group of friends that he comes home to every summer in Florida, and it's like 4 guys, right? Like, and they all go out in the boat and they all go fishing, and it doesn't really change. And those are the people who actually know Tommy White. And like, I think Tommy is a fun guy in the dugout and a fun guy for the team. It's just like when he gets around media, he's definitely a lot more tight-lipped. I think he's gotten more and more comfortable with us as like time has wore on, because I doubt he got the media coverage that he is getting now at North Carolina State. So he is, he's got a personality. He's got a little spice to him, like he can be a little like, he's kind of got that confident edge where it's not, I wouldn't say it's cockiness because he backs it up. I would say it's just a very assured confidence. Like he knows what he can do. He knows when he messes up, and he knows what he's capable of. And so I don't think that wavers at all, which is, I think that's awesome. And I think that's what you need. He's got like a pitcher's confidence, but he's a hitter. You know what I mean? So yeah, he will joke around a little bit with us now. Like he will just kind of like, it's just like a one-liner or something. Like he's not a long-winded guy. He will say very short statements, but some of them can be very powerful.
Yeah, always important to have somebody that's like a leader by example, right? And then like when they speak, it's important. It seems like this team's got a bunch of leaders on them. Whenever you see other people like Dylan Cruz, Paul Skeens, if you're drafting in the MLB next year, you have the number 1 overall pick. Who you looking at? Who you taking?
Yeah, number 1 overall pick. I mean, I still think, well, it depends on each team's needs, and can't say I'm an expert on the Pirates or the Nationals. But I still think Dylan Cruz, just based on, his consistency and throughout his collegiate years. And if you need a pitcher, then take Paul Skeens, like no question. I think it's hard because they're different players, right? Like, how do you compare a pitcher and an outfielder? You can't. But I do think both of them have the character and the makeup to go all the way. Paul, I know, like, could be that guy who could make an immediate impact unless they shut him down based on how far he makes it through college season. But he could very well be somebody you see pitch in the major leagues as soon as like this fall or next year. So the immediate value on Paul might actually be a little bit higher. But I do see Dylan making his way into a lineup within the next couple of years and being a total game changer just based on his plate discipline. And I think that plate discipline is something that's very unique. A lot of times you see guys, and think you see a little bit of that in Tommy White. Like, I mean, he's the nation's like freshman home run leader last year, right? And so pitchers know that, and they're not gonna pitch to these guys. And so you have to adjust your game. And the fact that Dylan Cruz has adjusted his game for now the 3rd year in a row and playing his best ball, I think that says a lot. And people are going to be like, well, I don't know. Like, it's not like he's hitting like a home run as like every day. He's not leading the team in home runs. He still has a lot of them. He has like 15 or 16, but he's not the leader. But it's his on base percentage. Like, it's the fact that like his strikeout rate is like 10%. Like, this kid is always going to get on base. So I think that's what stands out and that people kind of forget.
Yeah, both talented, right? I don't think you're upset with either one if you're drafting at the top of the draft. And like something I almost always wanted to ask a baseball coach is what's more important, right? A pitcher or a hitter? Obviously we know what Jay Johnson would say, but you've seen in the MLB where you have a certain guy like a Garrett Cole and Aaron Nola, they go out, you're like pretty sure you're going to win that game, right? Like who has more of that impact? Always wanted to ask a baseball coach that, but kind of just wanted to get your thoughts. 2 last questions for you. One, just kind of LSU's opponent this weekend. I know a lot of people have been saying, and I've been saying this, I wish LSU South Carolina would play that 3rd game, right? South Carolina loses the series to Auburn. Does that tell us more about South Carolina or more about this Auburn team LSU is going to face?
Yeah, I remember I was watching like I was kind of watching the scores of this matchup this weekend thinking, "Oh my God, this is kind of surprising," because I think Auburn lost a lot of guys and lost, their top guy in Sonny DeShera from last year. And I haven't looked into their team too deeply yet, but they weren't off to a good start and they weren't predicted to be anything. Um, I think again, yeah, we will never know what happened with that third game for South Carolina. I think that would have told us a lot. I think South Carolina is a little bit stronger on I want to say they're stronger on the pitching side than LSU is, but we didn't see the third game. And the third game tells you who's left in the bullpen, right? And so I do know that South Carolina's got some powerful hitters. I think Ethan Petrie, the freshman, the one that got the first home run off the year, off of Paul Skeens, he's going to be a big time star in college baseball. So, I think South Carolina is a strong team, and this may have been just one of those situations where like shit happens, right? Like it's college baseball and they had a bad weekend, and that is definitely likely. I don't know if it's telling. I have to go back and look at the numbers. I don't know if it's telling that they've lost a lot of guys or they have some weaknesses. I think Auburn probably knows that it's nearing the end of the season. It's going to be a bubble team. And so like they're going to give everybody their best shot because they need all the wins they could possibly get. So when you have more to gain, and South Carolina is pretty comfortable right now, kind of like LSU, I think, it's not that you play harder, but, it is kind of like a thing where, I can't remember what the saying is. Yeah, I just think that when you have more to gain out of the situation, I mean, if LSU loses the series to Auburn, they haven't yet lost an SEC series, so it really won't be a huge deal. But if Auburn wins, it will be a huge deal for them, so it's a little bit more meaningful.
Yeah, if LSU loses the series, it'll be like, man, now we even more so wish South Carolina and LSU would have played that third game. Almost like a way to kind of differ the two teams. I saw Todd Pollitt put out that LSU is outpacing the Gorilla Ball years. Do you think they can continue that throughout the rest of the season?
I think they definitely could on down the stretch. I mean, you think about who they have left on the SEC schedule. They have arguably the weakest teams left past Auburn. You got Mississippi State and Georgia. I think Georgia got beat by Ole Miss this weekend 2-1. Mississippi State, we know, is not the team that Mississippi State normally is. So yeah, I think they could totally like be on pace to surpass those years. And then you still have the SEC tournament, which will be a lot of reps, and then a whole postseason. And we don't know where that's going to go, but shoot, I mean, there's a lot of baseball left to be played. People are like saying, oh my God, it's almost the end of the season. Shoot, it's not the end of the season. I'm out of town half the month of May for this team. Like we're just getting started.
Yeah, and the SEC tournament's always long. Then you never know what happens in postseason, right? Just seems like as it gets hotter, more baseball is getting played for the Tigers, especially this team. But to follow everything over at LSU, she's one of the best that does it. Follow Leah Vann on Twitter at @LVan_sports. Leah, what do you have coming up on the Advocate?
Yeah, well, I'll be at the midweek game tomorrow in Hammond. And I think I'm writing a little piece on the bullpen before then, so keep an eye on that. And then later this week I'll have a feature on Alex Milazzo, so keep an eye out.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.